For years, I was the family fixer until they pushed me too far, and I canceled their dream vacation. Elara had always been the dutiful daughter, the planner, the one who made things happen. For years, she'd scrimped and saved, fueled by countless overtime shifts at the accounting firm, to orchestrate a dream one-week trip to Prague for her parents. Flights on a top-rated airline, a boutique hotel nestled in the heart of Old Town, private tours of the Prague Castle and the historic synagogues. Every detail was meticulously arranged. It was meant to be their trip, a chance for Elara to show her appreciation for all the sacrifices they'd made for her growing up. But as she pulled up to her parents' house that crisp autumn morning to drive them to the airport, her jaw nearly hit the floor. Standing beside her parents, bathed in the golden light of the rising sun, was her younger sister, Serafina. Serafina, the perpetually struggling artist, hadn't held a job for more than a few months at a time, drifting from one half-baked project to another. Her bohemian clothing always looked perfectly disheveled, as though she'd put hours into achieving the effortless look. "Oh, darling, Serafina is coming with us instead of you," her mother chirped, her voice laced with that familiar, dismissive sweetness. Her mother, a woman who always prized artistic expression, continued, "She's been feeling so creatively blocked, and a trip to Prague might spark some inspiration." Elara's carefully constructed world tilted on its axis. "Instead of me? Mom, I've been planning this for 2 years. I paid for everything." She could feel her pulse quickening, a knot forming in her stomach. Her mother waved a hand, as if swatting away a pesky fly. "Don't be like that, Elara. You can always go later. Serafina needs this." Serafina, never one to miss an opportunity, offered a saccharine smile. "Thanks, sis. You're the best. I've been feeling so uninspired lately. Prague will surely change that." Elara noticed the glint in Serafina's eye, a mixture of triumph and practiced innocence. It was a look Elara had seen countless times before. As Elara numbly loaded luggage into the trunk, her father shuffled out, avoiding eye contact. He'd always been a gentle, passive man, easily swayed by her mother's strong personality. He simply handed Elara his worn leather suitcase, the silence speaking volumes. Driving to the airport, the silence in the car was punctuated only by Serafina's incessant chatter. "Oh my God, I must find those hidden gems, you know, the cute ones? I saw a photographer do a shoot there. The shot went viral." She rambled on about wanting to photograph Prague's astronomical clock for her new series, a series that, as far as Elara knew, consisted of blurry Instagram photos. Elara felt a cold fury building inside her. She'd always been second best, the reliable one who was taken for granted, but this was a new level of disregard. The moment she dropped them off at the airport departure zone, Elara drove straight home, her mind racing, a tempest brewing within. An idea, reckless and exhilarating, began to form. She went to her laptop and, with trembling hands, systematically dismantled the trip she'd painstakingly created. Hotel reservations canceled with a click, tour bookings vanished into the digital ether, even the airline upgrades, secured after hours on the phone with customer service, were refunded. A grim satisfaction washed over her as the confirmation emails piled up in her inbox. The phone calls began as soon as their flight landed in Prague. Elara ignored the first few, letting them ring out while she imagined her family's bewildered faces at the hotel check-in. Finally, she answered, steeling herself for the inevitable confrontation. "Elara, what have you done?" Her mother's voice was shrill with outrage, the carefully constructed sweetness gone. "The hotel says there's no reservation. And the tours, everything's gone." "Oh, dear," Elara said, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "How awful. I wonder what could have happened. Maybe there was a mix-up?" "Don't play innocent with me. You did this, didn't you? You're being unbelievably petty." Serafina shrieked in the background, her voice laced with indignation. "I am going to miss a perfectly great photo shoot because of you. Petties?" Elara retorted, her voice rising. "You want to talk about petty? How about hijacking a trip that someone else planned and paid for? You wanted Prague, Serafina? Go find it yourself. It's not my problem that you didn't bother to research the location well enough. Maybe that is why your pictures never go viral. Elara hung up and switched off her phone, sinking back into her sofa, with a sigh that turned into a sob. The next few days were a strange mix of guilt and liberation. She knew she'd crossed a line, but she couldn't bring herself to regret it. It was a twisted form of self-preservation. The calls and messages continued, escalating from frantic pleas to furious accusations. Elara ignored them all, immersing herself in work and rediscovering hobbies she'd neglected for years. She took long walks in the park, reread her favorite novels, and even started learning Czech through an online course, a small act of defiance against the chaos she'd unleashed. Finally, after a week, a call came through from her father. His voice was weary, defeated, a stark contrast to her mother's usual fiery tone. "Elara," he said, "your mother and Serafina are back home. The trip was a disaster. They're furious with me, blaming me for everything. I can't take it anymore. Please fix it." "Dad," Elara said softly, her voice tinged with a sadness she couldn't suppress. "I'm not fixing anything. You made your choice. You wanted Serafina to have Prague. Now she has it, in all its unglamorous, unscripted glory. They wanted me to sacrifice, and when I did, they got mad at me. That is not my problem anymore." There was a long silence. "I don't understand you anymore, Elara," he said finally. "I thought you were better than this." "Maybe I am," Elara replied. "But I'm also done being taken for granted. Maybe it's time you started understanding me." Elara hung up, feeling a pang of sadness that settled into the pit of her stomach, but also a quiet sense of resolve. She knew she'd likely damaged her relationship with her family, perhaps irreparably. But she also knew that she'd finally stood up for herself, and in doing so, she'd found a strength she never knew she possessed. A few weeks later, Elara booked a ticket to Prague, just for herself. She stayed in a small, unassuming guest house, wandered the cobblestone streets alone, and discovered hidden cafes and quirky art galleries that weren't listed in any guidebook. She took a photography class and learned how to actually take photos in Prague. She also had a really great pastry. It wasn't a luxurious, meticulously planned trip she'd envisioned, but it was hers. And in its own imperfect way, it was perfect. When her parents and Serafina finally returned, Elara decided to meet them. She'd parked across the street sipping coffee and feeling surprisingly calm as she watched their taxi pull up as they stepped out dragging their suitcases behind them. Their faces were a mix of exhaustion and irritation. She even saw Serafina's camera, its camera roll full of nothing. Lauren was the first to speak. "Well, I hope you're happy, Elara." Elara raised an eyebrow, staying seated on the porch swing, and simply replied, "I am." "Happy about what?" "Our trip was a disaster," her mom snapped, waving her hand as if to brush the whole thing away. "We spent the entire week staying in dingy hostels and eating street food. Do you know how dirty that is?" Elara simply smiled. She knew that her relationship with her family might never be the same, but she also knew that she had finally taken control of her own life. And that, she realized, was a happiness that no one could take away from her.